Mitigating aggravating circumstances in death penalty cases. A sessions court in Kolkata sentenced Sanjay Roy, convict of the rape and murder of a doctor at RG Medical College and Hospital, to life imprisonment on Monday. CBI had argued strongly for the death penalty in the case that shook West Bengal and triggered several weeks of protest and strikes by doctors. West Bengal Chief Minister Mamata Banerjee had demanded death for the murderer. The Supreme Court has held that the sentence of death should be passed only in the rarest of rare cases after the court has considered possible aggravating and mitigating circumstances. Bachchan Singh vs. State of Punjab 1980. In Bachchan Singh, the Supreme Court considered the challenge to the constitutionality of death penalty. It upheld the death penalty but said it should be imposed only in the rarest of rare cases where there is no possibility of reformation. The five-judge constitution bench did not specify the standards to determine whether the death penalty should be imposed, but laid down a non-exhaustive list of aggravating and mitigating circumstances for courts to consider while making a decision. Aggravating circumstances: if the murder is pre-planned, calculated, involves extreme brutality. Murder involves exceptional depravity. If the accused has been found guilty of murdering a public servant, police officer, or member of the armed forces while on duty, or because of anything they may have done lawfully done while discharging their duty. Mitigating circumstances, which could tilt a case away from death penalty, where the accused was under the influence of extreme mental or emotional disturbance at the time of offense. Age of the accused, as they would not be given death penalty if they are very young or very old. Probability of the accused posing continued threat to society. Probability of reforming the accused if the accused was acting on the directions of the another person. If the accused believed their actions were morally justified. If the accused suffers mentally and is unable to appreciate the criminality of actions. After Bachchan Singh, the understanding of mitigating and aggravating circumstances has evolved over the years, and the new factors have been added to the list through several decisions. These include age of accused in several cases, including Ram Naresh and others versus State of Chhattisgarh 2012 and Ramesh versus State of Rajasthan 2011. The Supreme Court considers the young age of accused persons below 30 as in the case of indication that they could be reformed. However, as the Law Commission of India in its 262 report, death penalty age as a mitigating factor has been used very inconsistently. In Shankar Krishnan Khade vs. State of Maharashtra, Supreme Court split several cases with similar facts into two groups where age was considered as a mitigating factor, where age was ignored and considered irrelevant. In Shankar Khade, Supreme Court said court could compare the case before them with a pool of cases concerning similar offences before determining the punishment. Otherwise, the court said applying the rarest of rare doctrine would become subjective. The Law Commission report used as an example of cases concerning the rape and murder of a young child and presented examples to show that it shocks the judicial conscience in some cases, not in others. In Machi Singh versus the state of Punjab, the Supreme Court held that death could be given in cases where the collective conscience of society is so shocked that the judiciary is expected to impose the death penalty. In Machi Singh versus state of Punjab, possibility of reform. In Bachchan Singh, Supreme Court held that government must prove that there is no possibility of reform and that the presumption would be against such a penalty. In Santosh Bariyar vs. State of Maharashtra, Supreme Court said the court will have to provide clear evidence as to why convict is not fit for any kind of reformatory and rehabilitative scheme. Law Commission report said the requirement for the evidence was held as essential in Barrier for introducing an element of objectivity into the sentencing process. When should the court consider these circumstances? In Bachchan Singh, Supreme Court said courts must conduct a separate trial after convicting so that judges can be persuaded why the death penalty should be imposed. When should this separate trial take place? In several rulings, Supreme Court held it can be on the same day. In other cases, it stressed the importance of real, effective, and meaningful hearing during the sentence hearing in death penalty cases. In the Traya vs. State of Maharashtra, the court held that such a hearing will not take place and this will be a valid reason to commute death sentence to life imprisonment. In suo motu proceedings insinuated in 22 mitigating circumstances to be considered while imposing death sentences, Supreme Court asked whether sentences delivered on the same day as the conviction satisfy the requirement of meaningful and effective hearing. Annual meet begins in Davos. What is the World Economic Forum? The World Economic Forum is holding its annual meet from January 20 to 24 Davos, Switzerland. Attendees will include European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Chinese Vice President Deng Xuexiang, and other leaders in business and politics. Union Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw is heading the Indian legislation. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis, Telangana Chief Minister Revant Reddy, and Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister Chandrababu Naidu will also attend. There will be a detailed discussion in the WF annual meeting World Economic Forum about inclusive growth, investment in social, physical, and digital infrastructure, and democratizing technology. WEF, its founder, German professor Klaus Schwab, founded the WEF. He was a mechanical engineering graduate who then earned a Master of Public Administration degree from John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University. After working as a professor for several years, he founded the WEF in 1971, originally known as the European Management Forum. It introduced the concept of stakeholder capitalism. According to the WEF website, a company should serve all its stakeholders, not just its shareholders, employees, suppliers, and community it is part of. In service of this idea, business, government, and civil society leaders annually make their way to the Alps to consider the major global issues of the day and to brainstorm solutions to address these challenges. Initially, Schwab's focused on the meetings on how European firms could catch up with the US government practices. Events in 1973, namely the collapse of Bretton Woods fixed exchange rate mechanism and the Arab-Israeli war, saw the annual meeting expand its focus to socio-economic issues. 2 years later, the organization introduced a system of membership for the 1,000 leading companies of the world. The European Management Forum was the first non-governmental institution to initiate a partnership with China's Economic Development Commissions. In 1979, same year, China and US established diplomatic ties. Davos brings together some 3,000 participants, including paying members and select invitees, among whom are investors, business leaders, political leaders, economists, celebrities, and journalists. The WAF is largely funded by its partnering corporations. These are generally global enterprises with annual turnover greater than $5 billion. In 1998, participants emphasized the need to include major developing countries in the process. One idea was to set up a body to include 20 countries, half developed economies, and the other developing ones. Redefining obesity. A commission of Lancet Journal has proposed expanding the definition of obesity to look beyond BMI and include assessments of organ functioning and physical symptoms associated with obesity. 2.5 billion adults globally are overweight, including those living with obesity. The Commission suggestion looking at any two of the following parameters for evaluating body size: BMI, waist circumference, waist to hip ratio, waist to height size. Doctors may use methods such as DEXA scan to directly measure body fat. The Lancet Medical Journals Diabetes and Endocrinology Commission last week proposed new definition and method for diagnosing obesity beyond simply looking at a person's body mass index, the ratio of one's weight and height. This comes after years of research and piling up of significant evidence body of evidence suggesting the BMI alone is an adequate measure for diagnosing treating people for obesity. How is obesity measured thus far? Person with BMI of less than 18.5 is considered underweight, BMI 18.5 and 24.9 normal, and BMI between 25 and 29.9 considered overweight, while those with BMI over 30 are considered to be obese. BMI is calculated by dividing a person's body mass weight in kilograms by the square of their height measured in meters. For example, if a person weighing 70 kilograms has a height of 1.175 centimeters, roughly 5 feet 9, the BMI of 22.89. Criticized, so relying solely on BMI cuts off leads to both over and under diagnosis of obesity. People with excess body fat may not always have a BMI of more than 30. They may nonetheless suffer from health consequences of obesity. On the other hand, people with high muscle mass may have a BMI of more than 30 while being extremely healthy and need no need of any intervention. Bail under PMLA interpretation by Supreme Court High Courts of law on exception for women. Supreme Court criticized ED last week for arguing that rigorous bail conditions in money laundering cases will apply to women even though PMLA provided provides an exception to the standards. We will not tolerate conduct on the part of Union of India to make submissions contrary to the statute. Bench of Justices said, while hearing the bail plea of women accused of aiding alleged money laundering activities by the promoter of Lucknow based real estate company. The court gave bail to the women, a government school teacher named Sashibala. PMLA and the exception, Section 45 of the PMLA, which provides for bail, puts the onus on the accused seeking bail to prove that there is no prima facie case against them. This is similar to stringent bail standard under the anti-terror law UAPA. No person shall be released on bails or on his own bond unless public prosecutor has been given opportunity to oppose the application, and when the public prosecutor opposes the application, the court is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for believing that he is not guilty of such offence. Section 45 of PMLA, which provides for bail, puts the onus on the accused seeking bail to prove that there is no prima facie case against them. This is similar to the stringent bail standard under the anti-terror law. Section 45 Class 1 reads, no person shall be released on bail on his own or on his own bond unless the public prosecutor has been given an opportunity to oppose the application, and where the prosecutor opposes the application, the court is satisfied that there are reasonable grounds for believing that he is not guilty of such offence and that he is likely to commit an offence while on bail. However, there is an exception to this bail standard which applies to minors and sick people, provided that a bail person who is under age of 16 years or he is a woman or is sick or infirm may be released on bail if the special court so directs. This exception is similar to exemptions under IPC for women and minors. In 2023, Delhi High Court granted bail to Preeti Chandra, wife of Sanjay Chandra, who was the director of Unitech Group, underlining exceptions for women. The High Court rejected ED's argument that the accused was not entitled to the benefit of the exception because she was not a household lady. To argue what kind of women is entitled to fall within the proviso of Section 45 Class 1 PMLA by creating an ad hoc illusionary subclassification of educated women, business women, Women belonging to high social strata within the broader classification of women is misconceived. However, to be eligible for bail, the accused must not uh, to be a flight risk or tamper witnesses, the court said. In April 24, however, the trial court in Delhi denied interim bail to Bharat Rashtra Samiti leader K. Kavita in the Delhi excise scam, observing that it was not obligatory or mandatory for the court to follow these exceptions. Justice Kaveri Baveja observed that Kavita was well educated and a well placed woman in the society and could not be considered a valuable woman for the purpose of exception under the PMLA. The ED is investigating alleged fraud by the Shine City Group and its promoter Rashid Naseem, who, according to May 24, released by agency, collected huge amounts of money, approximately 800 to 1000 crore from the public, and promised huge returns on investment. However, no such returns were given to the investors and they were cheated by the accused by way of committing fraud, the ED said. Sashi Bala is one of the several individuals accused of assisting Naseem in money laundering and concealing the proceeds of the crime. The ED has alleged that she was Naseem's main confidant and received more than 36 lakh as part of the money laundering exercise. Shashi Bala was arrested in November 23 and her plea for bail was denied by Allahabad High Court in September 24. The HC held that she was in contact with Naseem, who is absconding, and coupled with proportion of fraud committed, she does not fall under the category of vulnerable women and would not be entitled to bail under exception for women under Section 45 of PMLA. Sashibala appealed to Supreme Court and in December 24, ED argued before the court that the exception should not be available to her. On January 15, Justice Oka said, if people who appear for the Union of Government India do not know basic provisions of law, why should they appear in the matter? Trust after RG Kar. Verdict offers some closure, but case has raised questions that demand more answers, interventions by city, state, country. Nearly 6 months after he was arrested for rape and murder of 31-year-old trainee doctor in Kolkata Arjikar Medical College and Hospital in August last year, the Sialda court awarded a life sentence to Sanjay Roy on Monday. The verdict offers a semblance of closure for the irreparable loss of a young life in a metropolis that prides itself for the progressive traditions and safe spaces, especially for women. The road ahead now must concern itself with the task of rebuilding citizens' trust in the city. The public outrage triggered by the incident at Arjikar rippled across the country last year. In Kolkata, agitating doctors had flagged issues that continue to haunt institutions and public spaces. CCTV cameras that don't work, absence of on-call rooms, gender-segregated washrooms, lack of centralized patient referral systems, and inadequate security measures that have rendered doctors increasingly vulnerable to violence. They were speaking for West Bengal, but their demands and complaints could hold true for any city in India. When it comes to women's safety, there continues to be a yawning chasm between intentions and outcomes. For instance, the 100% increase in the budgetary allocation for the Nirbhaya Fund for 24-25 notwithstanding, data shows that between 2013 when the fund was set up and 2022, less than half of the allocation had been used. In the aftermath of the Arjikar incident, the Aparajita Women and Child West Bengal Criminal Laws Amendment Bill 24 was passed by the State Assembly seeking speedy trials and death penalty for heinous crimes against women, expediting cases and ensuring that there is restraint of the law rather than sense of impunity are crucial for deterring future incidents. But it must also come with safeguards against knee-jerk reactions and quick fix solutions. For long, Bengal has been a place where women have been at the center of developing development narrative. Women also form the core of electoral base of the current ruling party, TMC, bolstered by Mamata Banerjee's women-oriented themes such as Lakshmi Bhandar and Kanya Shri. The party has the highest proportion of women in the Lok Sabha. In the initial days after the incident, Banerjee had chosen to be blinkered, refusing to hear the rumblings both within her party and in the citywide agitation. She acceded eventually to the request of agitating doctors to look into their grievances. At the Sialda court, the victim's father refused compensation. The judge said, I don't think money can compensate for any death. It was the liability of state to protect your daughter as she was on duty. No amount of retroactive action can make up for the senseless loss of a loved one to violence, but this is the moment for the state and society to affirm the commitment to make good on the promises of empowerment and equality. Gender sensitive design and policy should be integrated into city planning, women's mobility, must not come at the cost of their safety. Most of all, larger conversations on gender are needed across spectrums. MIS, not MSP. For farmers, minimum income support, not minimum support price, is the way forward. Gender sensitive design and policy should be integrated into city planning. Gender sensitive design and policy. Gender sensitive design and policy should be integrated into city planning. Women's mobility must not come at the cost of their safety. Most of all, larger conversations on gender are needed across spectrums. MIS, not MSP. For farmers, minimum income support, not minimum support price, is the way forward. In November 21, the Narendra Modi government repealed its three agricultural reform laws following protests by farm unions agitating at the Delhi borders. At that time, it tried hard to reach out to the unions and convince them about the laws which allowed trade in produce to take place outside state government controlled markets, and agribusinesses to source directly from growers were in farmers' interest, but in vain. Today, the shoe is on the other's foot. Since February last year, farmers from Punjab and Haryana have been unsuccessfully attempting to enter the national capital while demanding enactment of a law guaranteeing payment of the government declared minimum support price for all crops. One farm union leader has been on hunger strike since November 26. He has accepted medical aid on day 55 of his fast. But sides are but sides are at fault here. The farm reform laws were no doubt well intentioned. The failure then lay not in the bill's provisions but in the way they were steamrolled through parliament sans any real debate. The dialogue with the farm unions happened much after the laws got passed. Modi government shouldn't make the same mistake of not engaging with them at the right time. The ruling party's recent electoral victories in Haryana and Maharashtra leave it with sufficient bargaining position to convince the unions about the unreasonableness of the demand for a legal MSP. Price of crops, like all commodities, are or should be determined by the forces of supply and demand. Farmers must ultimately Farmers must ultimately produce what market wants. The government would do better to ensure well-functioning markets rather than fixing, leave alone guaranteeing MSPs. The debate should move from guaranteeing minimum prices for crops to assuring some kind of minimum income for farmers. There is already a Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi scheme that provides 6,000 annually for all landholding farmers. There is already Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi that provides 6,000 annually to all landholding farmers. The quantum of income support under the scheme can perhaps be enhanced and even modified under pet per hectare per animal basis. All the taxpayer money now we spend on farm input subsidies, whether on farm fertilizer, electricity, water, or credit, can be converted into direct income support. While prices of pricing of crops and inputs it will depend on market, it will enable government to focus on what farmers actually deserve, a minimum income so long as they continue to farm. MIS, minimum income support, and not MSP, is the way forward. Djokovic's last stand. Who's afraid of Trump? Apprehensions of disruptions of the global order may be greatly exaggerated. Grant it to Donald Trump. He knows how to sell an idea and get the market all excited and worried. He will reclaim the Panama Canal, occupy Greenland, and subjugate Canada. He might even orchestrate a political coup in London. An entire industry of global commentators has emerged predicting turbulence in the world affairs caused by disruption of the so-called post-war rules-based international order by President Donald Trump. It is not merely adversaries like China, Iran, and Russia that will go off after. It is predicted that, but also allies and friends across Europe and Asia. The Indian leadership seems to have gone into a funk, more like Xi Jinping received an invitation to Trump's inaugural. All the speculation about who was spotted at which do in Washington DC this weekend is no different from excitement surrounding the guest list to a billionaire's wedding. How much of this Trumpian turbulence and disruption talk is bluff and bluster? Indeed, how capable is the United States today to disrupt and damage the existing global order without hurting itself? Can Trump make America great again, hurting allies and losing friends? Can he do that, taking countries hostage? Is the international community so weak, disorganized, and vulnerable that it will simply bend and crawl? Do sovereign nations have no options? What is so special and challenging about America's first platform? When was the last time United States placed another country's needs and wants ahead of its own? For Trump to now claim that it is the time for US to declare America first. America has always been first for its leadership after the Second World War. It has refused to step away from countries it defeated and occupied in the war. On the other hand, it engaged in new wars to secure control over new territories and then claimed it was ensuring global peace and stability in the names of rule-based liberal international order. This was true even when it invested in defense of countries that it either occupied like Japan, South Korea, and most of the Western Europe in supplicant countries of Anglosphere. This is not the first time in recent history that fear has been instilled across world capital about damage that can be caused by American power. There was once a brief period that was called unipolar moment. The entire edifice of post-war balance of power system came crashing down with the implosion of Soviet Union. The United States emerged as a paramount global power. Scanning literature of that era, early 1990s, once comes across similar predictions of the US disrupting the global order of Pax Americana. Sure, the US used the moment to renew the sources of its power by introducing a new global trading order, a new set of rules for intellectual property protection, new military alliances, and foraying into new military adventures. American political scientist Francis Fukuyama declared victory for America with his treatise, The End of History and The Last Man in 1992. There are many still standing in Vietnam and Afghanistan, not to speak of China and Russia. If one chapter of history ended, another began. The unipolar momentum was just a brief interregnum. The moment of hubris had its consequences for the US and the world. The economist John Williamson declared that a Washington consensus would henceforth would define economic policy worldwide. It did for some time, then in 2008 it came crumbling down there, first in Wall Street, then in London City, and then across Europe. A transatlantic financial crisis was dubbed as a global financial crisis. In the next decade after that, Chinese economy took off, and India did not do badly either. The United States has no longer the capacity to impose its will through its multilateral financial institutions, nor through the global trading system. The spread of regionalism in trade and emergence of new markets has also reduced US capacity to impose its will. They were losers during the unipolar movement. In 1990, United States and European Union accounted for nearly 25% of world income each, and Japan had a share of 17%. Having lost a chunk of that share over the next of 15 years, the US recovered to regain and now accounts 26% of global income. European Union is down to 17% despite its expansion, and Japan has contracted all the way to 4%. Then too it was allies that got hit, adversaries survived. No wonder the export dependent Europeans and Japanese are in a funk now. But what of China and India? China has increased its share after that unipolar movement from 4% to 17%, emerging as contending pole. India did not do the bad too badly either. India came out of an unprecedented economic crisis made worse by American bossism of the unipolar movement and found its own path to renewed growth. If a weaker China and much weaker India survived that unipolar movement and threw spanner in the world's works of the end of history theorist, why should a stronger China and India worry too much about Trumpian turbulence today? Sure, both would be hurt by Trump's threatened tariffs, but Americans would be hurt too. Any sharp increase in US tariffs will hit producers in China and India, but it will also hit consumers in America. The global economy is far too integrated for even the most powerful entity to imagine that it can hurt without getting hurt. If the US looks inward to improve its infrastructure, invest in the education and health of its citizens, create more jobs at home for the unemployed, that would be good for the world economy. If America first is the means investing in US taxpayers' money at home and not on soldiers who go to distant land to die, that would be good for America and the world. The US still has the capacity to do global good, and in helping itself, it could help the world. At least some of the alarm generated by Trump's return to office could well be motivated by those in Washington, D.C., who either imagine they can scare countries into submission or hope to offer their lobbying services. They could be true in many That could be also be true in many capitals around the world. If a weaker China and much weaker India survive the unipolar world that spew spanner in a works of the end of history theorist, why should a stronger China and India worry about Trumpian turbulence today? Sure, both would be hurt by Trump's threatened tariffs, but Americans would be hurt too. Any sharp increase in US tariffs will hit producers in America and India, but it will also hit consumers in America. Any sharp increase in US tariffs will hit producers in China and India. Any sharp increase in US tariffs will hit producers in China and India, but it will also hit consumers in America. The global economy is far too integrated for even the most powerful entity to imagine that it can hurt without getting hurt. If the US looks inward to improve its infrastructure, invest in education and health of citizens, create more jobs for the employed, that would be good for the world economy. Fields of Viksit Bharat, Indian agriculture is seven imperatives for the Indian agri industry. Indian agriculture is at a critical juncture, balancing the need for food security, rural livelihood sustainability amid global and domestic challenges. While strides have been made in productivity, India continues to lag in adoption of several modern technology innovations To build Viksit agri economy in 2047, there are seven imperatives for the Indian agri industry. First, use of AI in agriculture. India is starting to deploy AI for critical use cases such as weather forecasting, pest detection, and control and crop yield optimization. However, penetration is limited to small subset of tech-savvy farmers in the US and in the US and Europe. Generative AI tools have started offering precision farming at scale, integrating large datasets to provide real-time agronomic insights. For At scale integration and accessibility of in India, it would be helpful to develop vernacular AI platforms for smallholder farmers, partner with agtechs to create affordable AI solutions, and disseminate AI-based advisory services through government programs. Second, India also had started in pockets with regenerative farming practices such as organic farming and zero budget natural farming. However, monoculture practices and excessive chemicals and fertilizers use dominates most farming systems, leading to soil degradation and biodiversity loss. France and the US lead to regenerative agriculture through structured policy, farmer incentives, and R&D on sustainable practices. For India, the focus should be on national regenerative farming policy and private sector led R&D for capital efficient agroecology practices. Third, robotics adoption in India is also limited to high cost and large labor force in rural areas. Basic autonomy automation tools like seed sprayers, seeders, and sprayers are more common, but advanced technologies such as robotic harvesters are inaccessible to most farmers. To build a foundation for robotics and automation, India must develop low cost robotic solutions for tailored to small farms, set up EdTech hubs for testing and deploying automation, and promote public-private partnerships to scale robotics innovation. Fourth, India's alternative protein market is in infancy. Driven by startups, affordability and scalability is a major barrier to adoption. The European Union leads in alternative proteins with government-backed initiatives and cutting-edge R&D. In India, the focus must be on collaborating with global leaders to improve production formulation techniques, and public awareness on lab grown proteins. Fifth, digital twins are limited in Indian agriculture. Field trials are manual and time consuming, increasing top cost and delay of deployment of new crop technologies. The US employs digital twin technology at scale to model field trials virtually, reducing cost and speeding up the launch of agri inputs. In India, partnering with agtechs to pilot such projects, training researchers in digital modeling, and exploring tax incentives for investing in digital twin solutions can not only boost transparency but also unlock productivity. Six, blockchain is still in experimental stage with the pilot projects in food traceability. Wider adoption is hindered by the lack of infrastructure and farmer awareness. China has integrated blockchain across multiple agricultural supply chain, ensuring transparency, reducing fraud, and improving market access. Export crops should also be in focus for India's blockchain to scale up materially, improve price realization for farmers. Seventh is climate smart farming techniques. While programs like PM Kusum promote renewable energy for irrigation, large scale climate smart initiatives are limited. India needs to scale up micro irrigation technologies, invest in climate resilient seed varieties, and bio based crop production products, and leverage AI to develop localized climate advisory systems. India stands at crossroads by modernizing its agricultural practices. By embracing innovation and fostering public private collaboration, it can become a global leader in sustaining sustainable and technologically advanced farming. The idea is not to copy paste solutions that have worked elsewhere in the world, but rather to customize and adopt farming practices based on Indian context. Rekindling republicanism. Let this Republic Day be about going through the motions more than going through the motions of sarkari ritual. He clarified that difference between November 26 and January 26 was any country that is not ruled by hereditary ruler is republic. Unlike Britain, still stuck to the bygone institution of monarchy, we have adopted a republican form. The idea of India being up to upon England appealed to me at a time when we lost most of our test matches to their cricket team, but then every other country was also a republic. A virus in perspective, anxieties about HMPV are understandable after COVID, but it has been circulation since 2001. Our health system is equipped to deal with it. First detected in 2001, HMPV human metapneumono metapneumovirus is a virus from the family called Pneumonoviridae and has been in circulation even earlier than human populations. The HMPV is well known to the medical community in terms of character, illness, cost, etc. So this is it. See you in the next one. Seizing the Breeze.